What is going on, guys? Craig1287 here, bringing you my top 10 games of 2014 video, and it is also, at the time of this video going up, it is my birthday. And I did this last year on my birthday. I released the video talking about my top 10 games of the year. Because my birthday does happen to come so close to the end of the year, it just kind of fits, I guess. And this is probably something, you know, I'll continue as a tradition every single year to have my top 10 video come out on December 23rd. So, yeah, let's start things off. I do want to give some honorable mentions and somewhat honorable mentions, games that I never got around to playing, but I feel like had I played them, they might have had a chance at getting on the list, or at least as an honorable mention. So games that I never did get to play over the course of the year. Some of these I've purchased, some I have purchased and want to eventually play, but I'm waiting till I get an Oculus Rift. And then some I just never ended up buying, but do plan to at some point. Alien Isolation. I already have it. I'm just waiting to get an Oculus Rift, because I don't want to play any horror games until I get an Oculus Rift, especially if they're first-person perspective. I'm just really anticipating that. Next one would be Dragon Age Inquisition. I was a fan of the first one. I did not enjoy the second one. I've heard a lot of great things about Inquisition, and definitely at some point plan to rock that one out when I have like 60 to 90 hours to spend on a single-player game, because that's what I've heard it takes a long time to beat. Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. I don't know when this came out on consoles. I'm pretty sure it was this year, but it might not have been. But it did just come out on PC fairly recently. I do own it, and I'll actually probably be playing it over the next 2 to 3 days. I'm going to just rock it out in one sitting, because I hear it's only like 2-3 hours without, you know, the replayability it has. But yeah, so definitely try that out. Sniper Elite 3. I was actually just gifted this by a fellow TG brethren, and so I now own it and will plan to play it. But I was a huge fan of the first two Sniper Elites, and even that Sniper Zombie, that zombie variation that came out for Sniper Elite V2. So definitely anticipating playing that. And Divinity Original Sin. This is kind of a hearkening to the old school RPGs of the glory days of PC gaming. And I don't own it. I'll probably pick it up at some point. GameSpot gave it their Game of the Year, I believe. Was it PC Game of the Year or just Game of the Year overall? I don't know. They gave it one pretty high rating, and it's been getting great reviews all around. So very much looking forward to that. Honorable mentions. This is going to be just games that didn't really quite make the list, but I thought were, you know, worth noting for you guys in case you never got around to them. You should know that they're at least good. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare. I never bought it, but I did trial it on Origin, and I had a blast. The only thing is, it's very similar to something like Battlefield and Titanfall and Call of Duty, and those games just kind of do it a little better. But it was definitely an interesting take on third-person shooter kind of stuff. Borderlands, the pre-sequel. I've always loved the Borderlands games, and the pre-sequel was pretty awesome. You know, they got the low gravity aspects to it, and some really cool physics, and it's just an all-around fun game. But you know, it's one of those you have to do it with co-op. It's not something you can do solo, and there's no competitive aspects to it. But still, it's funny game, awesome collectibles and stuff, and just a real fun ride. Grid Autosport is a game that I didn't really play too much, but it's a racing game that I've always enjoyed, the Grid series as well as the Dirt series. But so yeah, for you racing fans out there, check out Grid Autosport, as it finds a nice middle ground between sim racing and arcade kind of racing, like what you'd find in Need for Speed or something like that. Next one would be Hearthstone. I'm pretty sure this did release on PC this year. If not, it did release on the you know, mobile kind of platforms, iOS, and I picked it up on Android recently. I think it's in beta on Android. Maybe I don't really know, but it's a good game for if you like card games, especially if you've got a mobile device and you need something that's not too graphically demanding. I'm a big Magic the Gathering fan, have been since 1993 when the game released. So yeah, Hearthstone, pretty fun. Pretty fun, especially, it's free to play. PT, this was the horror game that kind of came out. I don't really want to say too much on this one because if you haven't experienced it, don't Google it, don't look up YouTube videos of it, don't get anything spoiled. Just go be in a dark room by yourself, headphones if you can, and just rock this thing out because it can spook you a bit. If you let things spoil it, yeah, it's not going to be spooky because you let things spoil. So go check out PT on. I think this is a PlayStation exclusive. I don't know, can't remember. I played it on the PS4 because I don't. Yeah, check it out. And Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. This probably makes certain people mad, but I don't really have anything against the Call of Duty series. I didn't really care for the last 3 games, which is why I didn't end up getting them. But I've had some fond memories of the Call of Duty franchise, and this one did a pretty darn good job. It probably would have made it to the top 10 list if they provided actual legit dedicated servers, because the gameplay is awesome. The graphics are pretty darn good for a Call of Duty game. It lacked dedicated servers, and I consider Call of Duty a multiplayer series nowadays. Even though the campaign is pretty good, it's definitely a multiplayer series. So, all right, well, we're 6.5 minutes into the video, and just now getting to the top 10 list. So, here we go. Number 10 is going to be Titanfall. I thoroughly did enjoy this game when it came out. I was heavily addicted to it, as were a lot of the TG guys. Some of them still play it all the time. I haven't because it's always a weird thing, but I always say, it lacked specific kinds of depth. I know it's got complexity in certain aspects of the gameplay, the movement system. It's just, for me, every round always ended up in just getting as many kills on pilots if you can find them, but just, farming the AI, get your Titan, and just run train on everybody. And people will say, oh, it's easy to kill Titans, and I don't know. In every round, I always got in my Titan and just demolished the team, and there's no challenge. I always had crazy high KDs, and I wasn't feeling challenged enough. But the game is fantastic. The map design is fantastic. I did a whole video just dedicated to that, and I mean, I'm really looking forward to Titanfall 2. Hopefully that does happen. So, very much looking forward to that. Next one, number 9, is going to be Southpark, The Stick of Truth. I'm a huge Southpark fan. I love that their style of satire, political satire, and social satire, just all of that stuff. It's just spot on for my humor, my style of humor. The gameplay, not the best. It's kind of like what was that? Costume Quest, that's what it was. And Paper Mario, that kind of combat where it's turn-based. And back in the day of the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, turn-based combat in RPGs was fine for me, but nowadays it's just not quite cutting it. But obviously, what else are you gonna do for South Park? So, and there's still some comedy, but moves got old a bit. But I mean, it's basically, for me, it was a very lengthy episode of South Park. So it literally, it's not the best game, but it's something that I definitely got an incredible amount of enjoyment out of just because I'm a fan of South Park. So if you're not a fan of South Park, then this is probably something that is totally off your radar. Next, number 8 is going to be The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. I thoroughly enjoyed this game. It is fairly short. I'm sure it's one of those kind of games that a lot of people will say it's not a game, kind of like Gone Home and Dear Esther and things like that. But for me, it's definitely a game. It's definitely got some cool puzzle-solving elements, some very freaky elements to it that caught me off guard. I didn't know it was going to be a game that had that kind of stuff in it. Had I known that, it probably wouldn't have been as freaky, but because I went into it not expecting it, it catches you off guard. But visually, probably one of the best, if not the best looking game in the entire year, and it's an indie game. But I love puzzle solving. I love kind of mystery games. That's something that I've always thoroughly enjoyed. So I guess another never got to play would have been the latest Sherlock Holmes. Put that on the never got to play list. I need to get that. Next one, number 7, is going to be Mario Kart 8. I've always been a Mario Kart fan. Yeah, I mean, there's really not too much to say. If you know Mario Kart, if you're a fan of Mario Kart, then you'll know why it's up here. It's just a ton of fun. Didn't really get to play it too much, but whenever I get in groups of people and have multiple controllers, then, Mario Kart, it's always a blast. Next, another Nintendo Wii U game, Super Smash Bros. Wii U. Again, they do a really good job. Those things are packed full of content, and I'm not a big racer, but Mario Kart's fun, and so is Grid. I'm not a big fighting game fan, but Smash Bros. Can't really go wrong with that. It's just tons of fun. Next one is going to be Wolfenstein: The New Order, and this one really caught me off guard. I pre-ordered it. I knew it was going to be an enjoyable game. I could tell just based on the gameplay. But when I went into it, I was expecting something like Duke Nukem, just really over the top, because you can dual wield all the weapons, and that's still there. It's definitely an over the top shooter in that regard, but it's also got some freaking amazing stealth aspects that I didn't think that I would enjoy. I didn't play the whole game in stealth, but when I had the opportunity to play it in stealth, I enjoyed it, and it just had a story that really caught me off guard. I did not expect it to have a story that was gonna that deep. So yeah, it was a pleasant surprise that a game from the Wolfenstein name would offer an experience like that. Next up, number 4 is going to be Firefall, and this is a game that has been in development for ages. I was really hyped up for it, and while it hasn't delivered the hype, because of what it was hyped up to be, the things it was promising to be, and it still might potentially be. It's a free-to-play MMO, so there's going to be tons of development. These developers are going to be constantly working on making stuff, as they have been already this year since its launch. Trying to work towards what they were originally planning to offer. But I mean, this game, it's just a fantastic FPS or third person, if you care to play it that way, shooter that's an MMO. The world is huge. It's the Earth. The scale of everything, the enemies, the diversity in everything, in the combat, and it's just, there's so much stuff packed into Firefall. And again, it's free, and there's really not that big of a pay-to-win aspect. There's a lot of content that is available to you if you don't even want to pay anything. It's a fantastic and very beautiful game. PC exclusive, but it's one of the best kinds of PC exclusives out there. The amount of customization for the HUD, graphics, everything. You really get the experience out of it that you truly want. Next up, number 3 is going to be Far Cry 4. And this was a surprise to see a Ubisoft game on the list, because Ubisoft this year has really screwed the pooch. They did a horrible job with a lot of games. Very bad decisions, but Far Cry 4, while not the best optimized game, I did have to knock it down from 1440p to 1080p, and I had to turn a couple settings down from ultra to just very high, so that I could get around that 80 to 100 frames per second. I feel like, with my hardware, I should have been able to easily get 100 plus relatively often. So having to do what I had to do just to get the 80 to 100 was a little rough. So, but still, the gameplay's good. It's kind of getting a little old. The method of climb the tower, explore an area. It's getting old, but it is still definitely something that is enjoyable. Those experiences climbing those towers. It's still fun, kind of puzzle element, and it's spicing up the shooting action aspect of it. And you get a sense of vertigo. I'm not someone who's afraid of heights, but when you're climbing those things and you make those jumps and you just barely get onto the platform and whatnot, you get that tingle in your toes and whatnot, like you got that almost sense of falling and whatnot. But yeah, it's still it's a fantastic game, fantastic shooter, great open world experience that hopefully they try to spice up, as you know they're going to make more Far Cry's. But still, a solid experience overall. And number 2 is going to be Insurgency, another shooter. Obviously, I'm a big shooter fan. And Insurgency is the full release version of a mod that came out many years ago. And, well, not many years ago, but a while ago. And it's a very militaristic shooter. It's more, I guess, you know, I'm putting this in air quotes, hardcore or authentic or realistic. I hate the term realistic for when talking about games. But yeah, it's a little bit more towards the sim side of things than something like Battlefield. But it's not so much so like Arma, where it takes it, for me personally, a little too far, where it's like there's not 50 different ways to crouch. You know, it's just a solid experience, very well polished for being an indie game, very cheap. I mean, it's like $5 on Steam right now at the Steam sale.
I still can't believe you did that.
But it's just the way the weapons fire, the way that attachment system is done. The AI in the game is some of the best I've ever seen. In fact, when some of the guys took me into a round, I originally thought I was fighting against human opponents. And then one of them asked, like, hey, you guys want to do some competitive now? And I was like, we've been doing that for the last, like, 3, 4, 5 rounds. And he said, no, this is, I mean, we're playing with other people, but we're going against bots right now. This is the co-op mode. And I was just simply blown away. I haven't seen AI like that since something like Fear, First Encounter Assault Recon, and the Stalker series, Shadow Chernobyl, Clear Sky, and Call of Pripyat. So yeah, that definitely is pretty crazy. But yeah, that game, I mean, they're still releasing a lot of free content for that, new modes, new maps, night versions of maps. It's just tons and tons of stuff, and it's just for me the perfect balance between authentic, realistic sim kind of shooter and some arcadey stuff, kind of like, you know, what you get out of Battlefield and Call of Duty. So, now before I get to my number 1, I do want to have to give out a kind of a Negative Nancy award. It's not the worst game of 2014 by far. This game is nowhere near the worst game. So don't get too offended by this when I say it, because I'm sure it's gonna piss a lot of people off. But this is the biggest letdown of the year. It's not Halo Master Chief Edition, because I wasn't really anticipating that. So I wasn't really crushed by the not being able to connect to multiplayer for a whole month that a lot of people are experiencing from that. For me, it was Destiny. Destiny was a huge letdown. And this is from somebody who wasn't even that hyped about the game initially. I only picked it up around like 48 hours before the game came out because some TG guys contacted me and was like, hey, let's all do a live stream. And there was 4 of us, including myself, and we get in, and we're trying to get 4 people into a squad, and we find out, wait, it's only 3. What is this? Is it supposed to be an MMO? There's like so many moments in that game where you're playing it. It's like I could tell they wanted this to be an MMO at one point, and then that just got pulled out from under them, and it's like, oh god, that game, the amount of farming, taking on a boss fight, the boss fights just never change. They're consistent, just a big target that deals a crap ton of damage, and you just have to pour bullets into it. It's just an incredibly average, mediocre experience. Incredibly polished. I mean, visually, it looks great, though it is locked at 30 frames per second, and the field of view is headache-inducing. But, I mean, the world that they created has got a lot of potential, or the universe they created has got a lot of potential, but so many aspects of it are just so mediocre, so limiting. There's just so many hints at what it could have been, and it just wasn't. So, again, not a bad game, just a very mediocre game that didn't deliver on what a lot of people were hoping that it could have been. And I know there's a ton of people out there still playing it, and a lot of you guys are probably going to get really mad that I called Destiny the biggest letdown of 2014, but I mean, in terms of what it was supposed to be, a 10-year game that was offering thousands of hours of a campaign, or what, it was like a 10-hour campaign that had one of the worst boring stories that opened so many questions that didn't get answered. Oh, it's an MMO, it's supposed to... Trust me, if you've played other MMOs, that's really not how it works. They screwed the pooch. Alright, now to stop being a Debbie Downer, my number 1 pick for games of 2014 has got to go to Warframe. Nah, I'm just kidding. Warframe, it's been my most played game, but it's still in beta. It hasn't even released. Whenever that game does come out of beta, it will be my game of the year. I can pretty much guarantee that. God, I've played so much Warframe, and there's no end in sight in the amount of fun that I'm getting out of that. Oh my goodness, and I've spent so much money on that. Oh man, I am addicted to it. But no, my actual legit #1 pick for game of the year for 2014. If you haven't tried it out, you've got to go try it out. If you like, action kind of just stuff, it's got to go to Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. That game came out of nowhere. I don't even know why I ended up picking it up. I mean, I guess I just saw some videos of it and was like, yeah, that actually does look pretty darn fun. Tried it out, and it just nailed it. It nailed it perfectly. It's the combat from the Batman Arkham series, but even better. It improved upon it in so many ways, made lopping off orcs and urks heads incredibly satisfying. I mean, you take off the heads of hundreds, possibly thousands of these guys, and the first one was just as satisfying as the 1,000th head that I decapitated. The combat's so incredibly satisfying. The upgrade system, it was very streamlined, very simple, but still had some depth to it. And the story is just awesome. Voice acting, awesome. The visuals, amazing. Kind of wish it wasn't locked at 100 frames per second. That was kind of a bummer. But really, that's the only negative that I got to give it, I guess. It's just a fantastic game. That's where the Far Cry series and the Assassin's Creed series, that's where Ubisoft, they got to take note into, you don't have to have these the mechanics that they just keep destroying. Well, it does have the tower kind of system. It's in a very different way. It's just Shadow of Mordor, incredible game, and it introduced the video game industry to the Nemesis system, which is going to be its biggest legacy. That is hopefully going to be the mechanic, like third person was copied after Gears. I know Gears wasn't the first to do it, but I hope that the industry copies that mechanic to death, and because that was so awesome, and it really just, I'm a big fan of, I love multiplayer, but I'm a big fan of a lot of first person, or not first person, but single player campaign games, and that was a big game changer. That really, it's not easy. I can imagine that was very difficult for them to do, and not every game's going to be able to pull that off because of the cost of doing so. But my goodness, that game, Shadow of Mordor, Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, fantastic game. So yeah, there you guys have it. This video ended up being very lengthy, and yeah, so hope you did enjoy it though. I'm going to go have an awesome birthday and play some new games that I've ended up picking up in the Steam sale, and for birthday and then Christmas and all this cool stuff's happening. So hope you guys have a Merry Christmas to you guys that celebrate it. Happy holidays to you guys that are not celebrating that. Happy New Year at some point. And yeah, hope you guys had a great 2014 like I did. Have a good one. Ta-ta.